to What If I Say Yes.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
So first of all, I'm going to ask you to tell us who you are.
My name is Jay Gittleson, and we have a sort of a connection.
What is that connection?
Well, I'm very close friends for many years with your husband, Carlos. And we met with, if you want to hear more, we met, and
Sure.
we were studying in England, and the school we we're going to, Fair Dickinson, had like an overseas program, an amazing overseas program. It's called Roxton College, and it's in England. And so I didn't actually know Carlos before that. He went to Madison campus in New Jersey. I went to the TNEC campus. So we would have never met if it wasn't for this like study abroad program. And it was really a great program, but Carlos was probably my closest friend, one of my closest friends that I met at the school, at the
It was only one semester, correct?
It was the fall of 1992. And Carlos and I really clicked because we have like similar sense of humor. We like to joke around a lot. And, you know, he's a kind of was like a bookworm. He liked to study and read, but he was also really funny. And like, you know, we were like jokesters. We were always playing jokes and stuff like that. So, but he's a great guy. And I think we kind of sporadically in touch. We've met before. I don't think you realized it because it was such like a party. It was Carlos's 40th birthday party, right?
Yes. So we were living in Jersey City and he was turning 40 and I must have asked for a list of his friends to invite. And you were on that list?
Amazing. What an honor. I was actually living in Rutherford, which is probably like 20 minutes away in Rutherford, New Jersey, in the Meadowlands, just close to Jersey City at that time. And I was already married and we had a young child. That was in 2009, right?
Yes.
Oh, so okay, so our daughter was like 8 years old at that point. But
did she come to the party?
No, I mean she was young, but she was home. My mother-in-law was like lived with us, and she was like elderly. Like she was more like to me she was like a grandmother. But she was like at home like with my mother-in-law.
Okay.
And I remember the party was pretty fascinating, and it was like very high level games, like intellectual, like word games. I don't know. I can't remember exactly.
I can't remember either. So did I make up the games, or?
I'm not sure who made them up, but there were like a lot of professor types, and I think Carlos was finishing his dissertation at the time. I think in 2009.
Yes. So, well, he finished the following year, the beginning.
Okay, he was working on it.
Because he was working on it. So then Maya was born. Then he finished his PhD. Then we got a job in Brownsville, Texas, and then we moved. Everything happened between February and June, July of 2010.
That's a lot in a short period of time. A lot of really special things. I mean, and your daughter. So I didn't get your daughter. I have not met your daughter, and we met briefly, but we weren't really. It was a lot going on, and then yeah. So when you moved to Texas, and we kind of lost. We were like in touch every so many years, but it was like strange that we were sort of. Carlos has a better memory than me. He remembers like every conversation that we had in England.
Really?
He remembers, we were talking the other day, he remembers like pranks that we played. I mean, he has like either an amazing memory or I just have a poor memory, but I have a good memory, but I've been through a lot since that time. And so maybe I have an excuse. Maybe, I don't know. I'm just like some of the things I've been through, but Carlos is a great guy. He was one of my favorite people. And I guess he was lucky to meet you. I'm not sure exactly how we met. How did you meet?
At the new school. So I went to the new school in 2000 to study a master's in anthropology. And he was there in political science.
Oh, that's how you met. What year was that?
2000.
Oh, so you already had known each other for almost 10 years at that point. And when did you get married? What year?
2003.
Oh, okay. So that was, oh, wow. It was like a whirlwind kind of thing, right? It kind of happened.
So we met in 2000. We got married in 2003. And then we started our family and all these beautiful things in 2010.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, it's great to meet you officially, kind of like meet you,
Yes. Hi, Jay.
Hi.
Well, hi again, because I mean, we met, as you mentioned, in 2009, but many things have happened since then.
Yeah.
One of which is this project that I have. So I've asked you to, I asked you to read first the text that my brother Hector wrote in 2016.
Yes.
And then to select a moment that I don't know about. I'm going to find out right now.
Yeah.
What if I say yes moment in your life? But before you tell us a moment, and I don't know if you were thinking of integrating that into your answer, but I would like to know, what was your take on my brother's text? What did you think, feel? What was your experience after reading that text?
I was really moved. I wish, I was, thinking about wishing I would have known Hector, like in real life. And, because I have a daughter, I have one daughter, and his experience of like, walking either to school or from school, and Valentina saw the doll and how it was a treasure to her, and then in that moment he let go, he let her, it could have been dirty, something, but he let her pick this, in her mind, a treasure, right? That she saw this, even though it was a broken Power Ranger doll, whatever. And he was allowing himself to let her be in the moment, right? And to let her have that moment. And he had a moment for him, because he was about boundaries and, and say, keeping things like that. And it struck me as a father to a daughter, and thinking back, and I know you won't believe this. I know you're not going to believe this. This is really unbelievable, but my daughter's 21 now. She'll be graduating college in May.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But she was home for the Thanksgiving, and it's like we have a lot of leaves outside of the tree, and there's a lot of leaves, and I needed help. And so I'm not making this up, but this is after I already read this, and I'd actually shared this with my daughter. I shared the story about your mission, and about what if I say yes, and about Hector, and about Valentina, because we're very close, and it struck me so much, and we talk a lot. So we were raking the leaves, and Lizzie is my daughter, Elizabeth, but we call her Lizzie. She's raking the leaves. I'm not making this up. She uncovered a broken doll in the leaves. I'm not making it up, and it had one arm missing, and we left it there. It's still there in the leaves, and it was like really stirring to me, because I just not long before I told her that story. And there's some young girls, the young family lives next door, not right next, in the distance, and maybe they had been playing, or maybe I don't know how long it had been there, because I really hadn't kept up with the leaves. And so it was like we looked at each other, and we were like, oh my gosh, that's like wild, So, but I could just felt connected with Hector, ever knowing him or meeting him, and it just really struck me. And I didn't know you were going to invite me to come on to the interview or anything. That was going to happen. I just mentioned to Carlos that I had checked out the site, and how that had an impact on me, and about Hector. So how did I feel? I felt like that it was like a real turning point, for him. I guess, right? And that and really the father-daughter relationship for myself personally, and how I was really, if I could say one, I'm a very like emotional person, so like I don't really want to be emotional or get that, but if it happens, I'm warning you. But I mean, the Liz, my daughter, is the miracle in my life. I'm sure every parent could say that, but I'm just speaking for myself, that my daughter, I never thought I would be a father, or never thought that and my daughter and I are so connected, and she, I'll get into that later if that for my yes, because it's very intertwined, but yeah, that really felt like I felt very connected with your brother since then, and also since some of the interview you did with Marty. I mean, that really, you would have no way of knowing this, because I didn't say anything to Carlos, really. So you really have no way of knowing what's going on inside of me. And then I didn't know I was going to be, you were going to invite me. I'm not sure even how that came about, but just that, you know, after listening to the interview with Marty, it just felt like Hector's been a part of me in a way, like just spiritually. And
oh, that's so lovely.
yeah, but seriously, yeah. So hope I didn't say.
Carlos got very excited with my new project with this YouTube channel, and then suddenly started getting ideas of people I should interview, and he gave me your name. And then I guess what happened with the doll and your daughter must have been Hector's seal of approval.
Yes, definitely.
From
Yeah.
wherever he is, he was, yes, I like this guy. Let's talk to him.
Thank you. You know, I'm going to hold back. I have a lot to say, so I'm going to let you go on and you guide the conversation, because I don't want to. I have a lot of things in my mind. But go ahead. Okay.
So for people who haven't gone to my website and don't know what we're talking about, that text is in my website, but it's when I make the video, it's going to be down here. So it's www.whatifisayyes.com, and you can read about it over there. So now, Jay, tell us what if I say moment you chose for today?
Well, it's a really sort of dramatic one, and I'm a pretty out there kind of person, like outgoing, but something was happening in my life in I guess we moved to Pennsylvania in 2015. So we lived all the way, continued living in New Jersey, but we moved here. And I knew that I had a health issue with my kidneys. A medication had damaged my kidneys like years before. And they said, you know, it'll be a slow process, but eventually your kidneys will fail. You'll need a kidney transplant. I knew that would be coming. So I was prepared, you know, I was preparing both medically, mentally, everything. I knew that eventually, but we moved in 2015, my kidneys failed. And I was near having to go onto dialysis in here in Pennsylvania soon after we moved to a really, so I'm not trying to be flippant or anything, but my wife is Catholic and I'm Jewish. And we moved to a place that I had a vision or a feeling that after visiting a friend in Pennsylvania, I didn't know Pennsylvania or anything. I didn't know where we were, where I was visiting. But I asked my friend, where are we? This is 2013. And he said, we're in Nazareth. And so a Jewish guy moved to Nazareth. And it was in 2015, and my kidneys, I came closer to, I was very sick and I was ill and I was in the hospital and I wasn't sure at that point if I was going to make it, but I pulled through that episode thinking, you know, what would happen, you know, but with as being, you know, my daughter and thinking about everything. And they said, you know, you'll have to start dialysis. And sometime after that, in March 2nd, 2017, there was some time that I was just very sick and just holding on, you know, until I had to start dialysis. So I was 47 years old. So you think I'm probably, you know, maybe Carlos is like a year difference older than me or whatever. So I was young for someone to go onto dialysis. And March 2nd, 2017, I started dialysis and I kept it a secret from everyone in my life, except for my family. So this was like people I worked with, I didn't tell anyone.
Why?
I thought people would think I wasn't functional. And here I was an very outgoing person and out there, but that was something I had kept a lot of things to myself that people didn't know about, and maybe in other parts of my life earlier in life, but I was, but this was something that I didn't tell people. So, and I had moved to Pennsylvania, so I continued working I worked from home because I ran a speakers bureau. So I was booking, I started a speakers bureau, motivational, inspirational speakers, mostly for schools. So that was like a thing. I had been a teacher, and then I had this dream about this vision about starting, and it's called A Vision in Motion is the name of my company.
Oh.
A Vision in Motion, right? It was like a dream. My life has been full of these like visions, right? Where I just noticed them. So that was kind of a thing. So I did, I was not telling anyone. And so I didn't really know anyone here in this area because I was new to the area. So my neighbor wouldn't have known, and when I went on to dialysis, I didn't say anything. And I had there was a church that was near, like a mile away from where we live, in Nazareth. It's not a Jewish area. It's a very, I live near Bethlehem, and live in Nazareth, right? So it's a very biblical kind of setting area. And there was a really picture perfect postcard church that was just like a mile down the road. We kept passing by there. And my wife said, "I'm Catholic." I said, "Well, who cares? I'm Jewish." And the reason why we went to that church is I met a man in an auto dealership, and he said, "Why don't you come to this church? We have about 50 people in the church. We started this church." And I'd seen the building. It was like really a quaint, really nice place, close to where we live. And so I tried for 8 months to convince my wife to go to this church, because he said, "You'd like it." And we didn't really know many people in the area. And I thought that would be a nice place to go. My daughter came up in the church, in the Catholic church. I was Jewish, I didn't really have any family. So it was more or less like in the background, just celebrating like Christmas and doing everything that just going along. My daughter knew I was Jewish. Maybe we lit a Hanukkah candle, but it was not part of her life, right? And so we finally convinced my wife to go to this church, and I didn't tell anyone in the church that I was on dialysis either. And it was nice, and the people welcomed us in the church, and it was really. Did
you tell them you were Jewish?
Yes, I said I was Jewish. I was Catholic. They knew that. They were just welcoming. It didn't matter. Okay. At that point, it was not, I was open about that part. But in the spring, we went there soon after I started dialysis, some months afterwards. And I was going every other day. I was going like Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday to dialysis, like hemodialysis, where you go into a center. And it's just very strange, right? Because it was just, it was just a very different kind of time. But in that spring, I had like a short sleeve shirt on, and this man came, and I had bandages on my arm I still have the fistula, the bump, where you get the access. I had a surgical procedure to get that. And that's where they put the needles for hemodialysis. It's, where the blood is, what it is, right? People know what dialysis is. And so this man said, "Did you get stung by a bee?" And I said, and I waited, and I thought to myself, I think this is the first time I'm going to say publicly. And it was right before the pastor was going to start the sermon. And I was sitting in the front, and I said, "No, I'm on dialysis." I said that for the first time, like in front of people. And the pastor, who was like an older man, he overheard me say that, and he came running over and said, "I want to donate my kidney to you," just out of just like that. And I knew that he wasn't like a well kind of an older man, but it was on. I didn't say anything. I just knew that he probably wouldn't be a candidate, but it was a very nice gesture that he would say that. And after that, the people in the church seemed to want to help me in some way, but it was out. It was out, and that was a yes, but that's not the it's the beginning yes.
Okay.
That's part of the yes, and the yes part, which was more dramatic, as related to that, because it was like a cascading thing. It was related to that, was that this woman came up to me in the church and said, "How could anyone help you if you don't share that you in need of a kidney?" There was like a 10-year waiting list for to be on the list. And at that point, it's a long story, but the main thing was I wanted to live for my daughter. I wanted to see her, to see as much as I could. And so I did say that out loud. And then the woman said, "You should start a Facebook page." I said, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not doing, and it's the opposite way I know now how to handle something like this, because, I became an advocate now, so I could tell you that later. But in 2017, I wasn't sure about that. I didn't do it, but I went to a conference, and the yes is coming. Am I doing okay here?
Yes.
Okay. So the yes is coming, about really letting the world know, because I went to a conference. I was invited by the local transplant center to come to a conference about something about fast track to receiving a living kidney donor. I didn't know there was a fast track. I didn't know anything about it. So my daughter came with me, and it was amazing. There were a bunch of people who were donors with their recipients, living donors. And there was a man there, a father, who was a teacher in Bethlehem. I was in Nazareth, he's in Bethlehem. And
Wow.
and his daughter, he had donated his kidney to save his 25-year-old daughter, who suddenly her kidneys failed while she was in her last rotation to be a doctorate in physical therapy. And so she was, yeah, and she was not ill with anything kidney. She just, something happened and she ended up devastating. So he instantly was decided he would be a donor, and then took, a year, some testing and all the things. And I didn't know this man prior to that night, but he spoke about it. And the daughter spoke a little bit, but he spoke, and it was just, he was a teacher. He was a school teacher. I had been a teacher as my first career. And my daughter was interested in a career in physical therapy. It was like little connections. She was in high school at the time. I think she was a sophomore in high school. And
hold a second. The fast track means that a family member can donate to you. Is that what the fast track?
That was just the title of the seminar. And that's possible. A family member could donate. So in this case, people there were mostly family members donating to another family.
As opposed to being on a wait list of 10 years.
Well, for a living donor, yeah. Wait list is for a deceased donor. So if you're on the waiting list, it's for a deceased donor, and there are many years potentially that you could wait. And with the living donor, which they were promoting, like finding a living donor, it could be a family member, it could be a friend.
So the fast track is from a living donor.
Or living donor, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, for a living donor. And we spoke after the meeting, everyone was leaving, and we spoke for like an hour. I spoke to the father, the daughter spoke to my daughter. And the next day I started a Facebook page. I just thought, I was just thinking, well, I think something, I should do that. So my yes was to put it out there to the world that I was in need of a living kidney donor to live for my daughter, and to be a lot, to have in a way, I didn't really, that fast track thing is kind of, there's no fast track, but to have the possibility. So I started a Facebook page, and it was a kidney.
What did you put on that Facebook page? Like, how do you tell your story to convince someone, a possible donor, to?
Well, really, it was no convincing. The whole method and of doing it was, I was sharing my story of my need, but it wasn't really to convince anyone. It was just to share my story. That's the way you do it. So, could you share my story? Could you just share it? And by they're knowing about it, and they're thinking, you don't know who's going to know, and if they could hit that share button, and then somebody else would know about it, and you would never ask any. I mean, I didn't ask anyone or have any direct thing, but when I did announce the yes, resulted in just putting the Facebook page there, that people that knew me, not from the church, but people that knew me in life, started to come forward to want to donate their kidney to me. So there were first 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, 5 people, maybe 7 people came forward.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was very overwhelming to think that someone would consider doing that. For me, I couldn't wrap my head around that. So that was kind of overwhelming. And my favorite waiter in my favorite Japanese restaurant, he was Filipino, and we met 20 years ago, and he was just a waiter in the restaurant. I loved the Japanese restaurant in Rutherford, where we used to live in New Jersey. And we just became friends outside of the restaurant. We used to hang out sometimes together. He was a great guy. And he was one of the first people that came forward. He FaceTimed me, and I was in the dialysis. It always seemed I was in the dialysis when it happened. And he said, I want to save your life. I want to donate. I want to get tested to donate. And he did go to the hospital forward, and he was young, but he was not able because he had high blood pressure. He had throughout his life. And you can't donate if you have high blood pressure, if you're diabetic, or if you're not the BMI, the weight. So that's the 3 main initial things. Then you talk about blood types and other there's a lot of matching factors, and there's a lot of other complicated stuff. And then but to be medically, the first thing they ask you in a donor screen is, are you diabetic, do you have high blood pressure? And then they do a phone call. He was immediately wouldn't be able to, because he was not medically. But I became so much closer to these people, even more than that. And then someone came forward who a few people came forward, but that resulted in the possibility. I was giving myself a chance to have that, and people were sharing the story, and it was kind of overwhelming. And I just want to mention that I'm not sure how fast I should go into anything else, but that was my yes was to do that. And I did write a book. I did just publish my book, my memoir, in June.
Can you show us your book? Do you have it around?
Oh, yeah, this is like,
Oh, do you have the Dying to Be Me in the back? I
oh
just
yeah,
saw it.
yeah, that was a great book. So my book is called Mysterious Ways, Discovering the Miracles of Life as I Fight for My Own. And you can see my hand, right, reaching up for the life preserver. You know? I had a vision about that, that would be if I did the book, it would be the cover. So, but the people there were two people there that were real people that had their hand. There were two of the people that saved me in my life, not related to the kidney.
Oh.
And so the book is a collection of, is that good? The book is,
yes.
The book is a collection of kind of inspirational, true stories from my life. And maybe it wasn't typical memoir, but I did it in sort of non-chronological order and became like a miracle in itself. If I know you don't want to hear yes, but it was all
I know this is all about saying yes. So you can give us as many yeses as you like.
Okay, so I'll just say
writing the book was another yes.
Yes, so they were, and that had a little deeper meaning, you know, instead. But the yes to tell anyone that I was, just to say publicly that I was on dialysis, I did in the church, and then to say yes to letting the world know, to let someone know, and then you know, the book in the last 6 chapters I talk about what happened. It was, you know, the journey for anyone in their kidney journey, if they're in a situation like that, is really not a predictable one. It's not. There is no fast track, you know. I mean, maybe a father might donate, someone might come forward right away, but it's a journey and of what would happen from the donor side to the. But anyway, and for recipient and for the recipient to be healthy enough. So for me to be able to qualify, I had to qualify. I did not qualify right away.
How do you qualify for?
You have to go to a transplant center and you spend a full day or a half day, full day at that center. It's not a passport that qualifies you in multiple. You have to go to each center. So I ended up in the end being listed as, you have to be listed just for a deceased donor list. To get a living donor, you still have to go through the same process and be qualified, medically approved as a recipient. You have to go through. So you have to have cardiac testing, pulmonary testing, blood tests. You can't. There's many tests that the recipient has to go through just to be viable as a candidate.
So just basically to make sure that if they give you an organ, you're gonna last.
Yes, that you will live, and through the surgery,
it won't go to waste in a sense.
Yes, that you have to, exactly.
Okay.
So that's a process that you go through, and I did not. That was another. I didn't know. I thought I was only going to get one yes, but the process of this whole kidney journey, there were important milestones. And when I first went to qualify in my local transplant center in Pennsylvania, Lehigh Valley Hospital in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of healthcare kind of thing, and one of the big it's called Lehigh Valley, and they have a small transplant center, and I did not qualify because I was too heavy, and I was always a big guy, but I had really gained a lot of weight like over a period of time, and I sort of just really was just despondent and eating and it was really bad. And so when I finally got to the transplant, I was not close to it. I mean, I had no other health issues, like, you know, just the kidney. A medication had damaged my kidneys like when I was maybe 35 years old, and then the damage had been done, and slowly I was losing kidney function. But the weight was a problem for me, and
so the gaining weight was that part of being kind of depressed or down because of what you were going through?
And thinking like that was part of it, and but it got out of hand, and so that prevented me from going quickly. At the time, I think there was only a 2.5-year waiting list at the local transplant center, and they wanted me to, so can I throw my no in to the process?
Sure.
Okay. So there's a lot of one no in this, but I thought about when they wanted me to get bariatric surgery, which is like weight loss surgery, and go fast. And I never wanted to get that or anything. And I think God helped me out a lot along the way. But
is that the surgery where they kind of make your stomach smaller
Yeah.
or something like that?
Yeah,
Okay.
and there was this new procedure where they literally cut part of it off, and then they just give you a smaller. There were different procedures, whatever, and I never wanted that. I was really at different times in my life into more fitness and doing, and my life had gotten like really whacked out. So I didn't want that, and they convinced me to test for that. You have to test for that. It was a lot going on, and I finally said no. You know, at the operating room door, I said no. Yeah, and I finally and they took me back, and it was a little help from God.
What made you say no?
Well, I'm not really telling the full. If we want to really hear the full story, was that I was against it, and as I was going to the operating door, just saying, well, if it gets me faster to transplant, to lose weight fast and get on the transplant list, I could have gone faster to transplant. That was my fast track at that point. I hadn't told it, that was my fast track. And this God helped out with this one. He helps with everything, but I'm just saying this helped me. I'm just saying that I was going to the operating room. I was at the doors of the operating room, and a loudspeaker came on, not in my mind, in real life, and it said, "Take him back." It wasn't in my head. The guy's like, "I've never heard that." He had the doors open, ready. The surgeons are in there, and it said, "Take Gittleson back." Not a Field of Dreams type thing, Kevin Costner. It was like, this is real. And he said, I'd been working 13 years, the transporter. And he said, I never saw that, but I got to take you back. And I knew I was saved there. They had actually, I was praying in a way, that I would never have to get that surgery. But I just did it against my better thing, because I just thought it would be faster. And it was that they had taken a blood test early that morning. And they said, I was potentially going to avoid dialysis by getting the surgery quick, and they thought it would take pressure and it would be better for me, and obviously. And the blood test said that I would be not make it. I would be immediately attached to a dialysis machine, either during or after the surgery, and the surgeon, this is like a $50,000-$60,000 surgery, maybe $70,000. It was insurance, but he has like 10 people in a day, and this guy was the sweetest, was amazing guy. He turned in an instant, and I said, no, I want to go home. And he turned like a viper, and he said, you're making a mistake. And he said something about, I wrote a book, and you can come buy a copy. I'll sign a copy of my book. It was bizarre. Like, it was just bizarre. The guy just changed when he's losing the money on the surgery. I think that's what he didn't want to lose a patient like that. Maybe he thought it was good. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being dramatic, but what I said, and I got up, and when I'd gone into the hospital that morning for the surgery, I said to I checked in at the front desk, and literally 45 minutes to an hour later, I was walking out, and I literally jumped up and clicked my heels. I was a big guy, and I said, that was a great surgery, to the girl. I'm glad, sir, and have a good day. Like, how could I have had a surgery in an hour, right? So I didn't I said no to the surgery. He wanted to keep me in the hospital overnight and then try it again. I said, no, I'm done with that forever. And I ended up losing the weight. I qualified. They said it's very hard to lose weight on dialysis. So I had a lot of challenges, right? I want to say Lucia or Lucia, help me.
Lucia.
Lucia, okay.
Yes.
I guess you were Italian, Lucia, right? You're from Mexico.
No, my dad named me, my dad chose my name because he loves, I always mess this up. I think it's a sextet of the opera Lucia de la Mermur.
Okay. Right, but you say
so either Lucia or Lucia, it's fine. Lucia, it's a no.
But how do you say? Hi.
Lucia.
Lucia, okay, got it.
Yes.
So when I said in the book, discovering the miracles, it's the subtitle, discovering the miracles of life. I mean, I found that to be sort of a miracle. It was sort of not a great thing that my blood worked, but it got me to think for myself that I'm going to really make an effort. And I did, but they said it's very difficult to lose weight on dialysis when you get on dialysis, and I was close to dialysis. And when I finally went on, I had lost a little bit of weight, but the physician assistant, who runs the center, the physician, he said, yeah, sure, you'll be that 1 in a million. Yeah, right. You should still go back, get that surgery. And I guess I was that 1 in a million because I lost the weight on my own. And
how did you lose it? Like, did you create a plan, with a lot of discipline and you're very committed?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And when you're on dialysis, there are a lot of restrictions, food restrictions. So it kind of helped a little bit, but it's very hard with the fluid in and out and doing that I had to lose another 75 pounds. And
in how many months, years, days?
No. Well, you get credit for time served on dialysis. So the day you start, you get credit for every day. Like once you do get on the list, it's a law. So I wasn't losing it, but yeah, that's not your question. But it took me from, let's say, March till like a year, maybe a year, a little under a year.
To lose 75 pounds?
I lost it maybe less than that, but the yes that I'm getting to, that was a no that led to, doing it myself and knowing that's my rest of my life. And why was I going to have all these other potential complications? Some people get it, some people do, some people gain the weight back. I don't know. I'm not saying other people might have success with that. So please forgive me. I'm not judging or anything. I was there, but
it was not for you.
Yeah. And so when I had gone to the transplant center originally and they denied me, I was in a tug of war. Like they had a folder when you go in for the evaluation and I wouldn't let go. And the nurse was like, give me that folder. You didn't qualify, and I was like in a tug of war with the lady. And so I was very hesitant to go back to be rejected. I was just at the level. I mean, I had to lose 100 pounds from the beginning. That's crazy. I mean, it's just insane, right? So I'm still kind of like, I'm not a skinny guy, but I had to lose like in the end. So I had lost maybe 20, 30 pounds before I started dialysis. Then I had to lose another amount of weight. So this story might sound crazy to you. I hope I'm not sounding crazy.
No.
So I went and there was a great medical director, and actually two, and I thought I could never and the one guy left the set to do some other job, and a new guy came. He happened to be Filipino, and I loved this guy. I loved him. I mean, he was so like calming, and he always took the time. He only was there once a month to do the round.
You know the waiter?
No, really. But he was such a great guy, and he would only come there periodically because there's to do the medical assessments, whatever. And he always stayed. It was like 5 minutes. Most people were half out of it, because they were so ill in the dialysis. And I was like, young. I was ready. I wanted to talk and do and whatever. And so the man, his name was Dr. Alasso, and he came, and I didn't want to go back to the transplant to get reevaluated because I thought I need to lose another 5 pounds. And he said, Jay, you're ready in 2018. You're ready. And I said, yes, another yes. I said, yes, I'll go, And I had my gym shorts and I had everything on, and the head transplant surgeon examined me. He says, I could work with this. I can work with this. And so I got listed. So getting listed was a big thing for me, right? I had no cardiac issues. I had no other medical issues. I mean, it was a lot to have kidney failure. So
now, let's pause for a moment.
Yeah, go ahead. From
the moment you were about to die, let's say in the hospital, the first when your kidneys failed,
2015.
This moment, how many years have gone by?
Well, 2015, I was critically ill. I was bleeding internally. That was 2015. And then I lasted another year and a half, very sick, resisting going on dialysis, resisting. And then they finally said, you have to go. That was, so from there, 3 years. So it was 2015, 16, 17, about 3 years had passed from that time. But I had been so I was on from March 2nd, 2017, I was getting the days that I would get back, right? But yeah, it was about 3 years. So I was in kidney failure.
So you get listed, and then what happened?
I got listed in Pennsylvania, and they said that'll be 6, 7, 8 years. For
oh my goodness.
So I knew that was going to be tough. I mean, over time you have to get reevaluated every year on dialysis as a patient. So it's not just one time. So every year you have to go back and prove your health, that you can make it through this. That you're going to make it through the surgery and be able to live and they don't just give it out, give you. And I was young compared to most of the people. So that was 2018. I went listed, and then I had, around that time, then I waited to make the Facebook page until I knew I had somewhere for someone to ever go to test. And I went to New Jersey. I don't know if you know, like St. Barnabas Hospital. It's in Livingston, New Jersey. It's a more established hospital. They're known. They have like the #1 burn center, I think, in the Northeast or something. It's a very top place.
Okay.
They have a large transplant center, and they had like, and I went there a few times, and I had to meet for the extra surgeons. Meanwhile, my daughter's with me in some of these appointments. My daughter's finishing pre-med right now. She just finished. She did pre-med program. So she got to meet all these doctors. Maybe that was a side thing, and she got to talk up close to a lot of people. You don't want to go that way, but that she did have a lot of weird, experiences talking up close to different doctors and stuff. But I got listed.
How old is she at this moment? When you get listed finally, how old was she?
She was she was a junior. She was 15 or 16, 16.
Okay.
I think something like that. 16 or 17, something. She was maybe a sophomore in high school or junior. And then so then I went. I knew that I had some friends in New Jersey, and I thought, well, this process was going to be over quick, because in 2018, remember my friend, the waiter, he couldn't thing, and then a few other people came. Somebody was too heavy. Somebody was just too old. I don't know. Somebody's mother wanted to do. I mean, there were a lot of different kind of scenarios. And then it looked like it was coming to an end. And a man who happened to be Jewish, a secular Jewish guy in Englewood, New Jersey. I feel like you know New Jersey, but you don't really know. You know where you live.
No, I only know Jersey City, okay, and when we traveled to Willingboro, where my in-laws live, that's all I know.
Okay, so anyway, yeah, so that's a. But in some other town in Jersey, this guy who I had met one time, I met him at a speaking conference. Remember, we're speakers. And this man was a speaker sharing his story of overcoming depression. And I met him at a speaking conference, but I saw him on Oprah the first time. He was with, his wife was a famous supermodel, and the wife was very close friends with Oprah. And maybe in the early 2000s, I saw him. I used to watch Oprah, and I saw him on there. And they had written a book together about their journey overcoming depression. She was very famous. And he was her manager, and they used to travel around the world. And I didn't know him, but I happened to meet him speaking years later, and he was going through a divorce after many years. It was a little sad for him, but we had a dinner a couple times, and then for 10 years he lost touch. And he saw my Facebook page. Remember, yes to the Facebook page. He saw that, and he called me and said, "What would it be to be a donor?" He had a daughter. He has a daughter the same age as Lizzie. She's also a model, okay, and whatever. She's 6 foot tall, whatever. And so he spoke to his family, his daughter, and I had already met some donors. So there's something called Donor Champion, where someone can advocate, like can share their story. So I knew several donors. Remember the teacher in Bethlehem, and I had met another man who was very well known as a donor. It's a long story, but he did, and I had become friends with him. This other man. His name was Brian. He became a big donor champion, and he was a similar age, fit guy in his 50s, like the other guy, Phil. His name was Phil, and he was fit. And he called me in dialysis. He spoke to the donor about his experience, and I got a call. I was again in dialysis. It always happens. I was on a Tuesday, and I was getting my treatment, and I got a call from this Phil, and he said, "I'm your donor. I want to do this, for you." And I spoke to my family, and
wait. So this Jewish guy ended up talking to this.
I put him in touch with, he wanted to speak to someone. And I had the idea, I met this other man, Brian, who I also saw on a television show, on the Today Show on NBC, that he had become, there's a difference. You could be a family member, be a donor, or you could be a friend, or you can be an altruistic donor, not knowing who your donor is, and just decide, which is rare, but this man said he had a good life. Man, Brian, the reason I saw him on the Today Show is that he had donated altruistically, not knowing anyone who was sick. He just went to his local transplant center in New Jersey, St. Barnabas, and he said, "I had a great life. I had a wonderful life. I'm a stay-at-home dad. His wife was a corporate executive. He stayed with 4 kids at home, and he was a great guy. And he was, not only did he save the life of someone in the database, an older Asian woman, but it started a chain. So the woman's daughter, who didn't match her mother, she agreed, and it's called like paired donation. So it started, she donated then after the mother, and then someone else donated and started a chain reaction. It's in my book. It's a story in my book called Chain Reaction.
Okay.
And Brian is a very close friend of mine now. It started the longest kidney donor chain in United States history. He just wanted to help one person, but it started, yeah. So it became, so that's why he was on TV in the media, and I just saw him on the show. I mean, like I saw a lot of shows involved here, but no, this man Brian, I saw him, and there was a video, and I posted the video from the Today Show on my Facebook that I said, yes, I'm going to do Facebook. And from that, Phil saw the Facebook page of this man, and he contacted me. I guess people were inspired by that. That's why I put it. Maybe someone's inspired. And I ended up getting a call the next day that I posted it, not from Phil that day, but from a guy that I worked with. And he was paralyzed in a wheelchair. He's a motivational speaker. He's a paraplegic.
Wow.
And I booked him. I know him for 20 years. He's very inspirational. And he said, Jay, I saw your post on the Facebook. I went to high school with Brian, the guy from the Today Show. You had gone randomly to high school with him. He said, yes, a lot of yes. And he, I said, could you connect me with him? And we started this friendship. And that man, Brian, was available then to said, if you need any help. And then he's the one that became a champion. They call it donor champion. He shared his story, and he was honest. There was some gas and pain, whatever. And then I got the call from Phil, the man, the Jewish guy, and he said, I'm going to test for you. And he went right away to the hospital in New Jersey, that same hospital that Brian had donated, St. Barnabas. And he said, I want to go fast. And he said, why are they going too slow? I want to help you. And he was telling me, normally it's all confidential, but he chose to tell me what was going on. That was his choice to say something to me. Like if it was your sister or brother, they might say, okay, I'm going today. It's unusual, but he was telling me. And about 6 months later, he called me, and he was crying on the phone, hysterically crying. And I was just concerned. And he said that they disqualified him. They disqualified him, and it had to do with his history of depression. They thought they couldn't go. It might not be good for that part. So he was devastated. We had him over our home. I was just comforting him. We became really close. We became like brothers through that process. We still are, but we became very close. And he said something to me that was really the difference maker in the whole process. Had I not said yes to the Facebook, no one would have known anything. Nothing would happen. So it wasn't fast track, but it was a track. And he said, I'll never stop until I help you find a donor. And and about almost a year, a little less than a year later, he called me, and he said, I met a woman who I think wants to help. I know another observant Jewish woman in Teaneck, which is a very Jewish town in New Jersey, near New York City, where I had grown up actually and spent a lot of my life. FDU, remember where Carlos went to Madison, the nice campus, the country club he went to, but I went to like the city, the Teaneck one. My father was a professor there. Okay. So he went there, he called me, and I'm trying to remember where I left off there, just that
that he had someone for you. So
so that he had met this woman randomly who was a physical therapist who had donated her kidney to her husband to save her life. It's a whole story. And I did talk about it in the book somewhat. And sort of, that's not the main part of the thing, but it was in there. And that is the main part, that she said, she didn't know me, but she said, we're going to help this guy, Jay. We're going to help him. And she said, there's an organization in Brooklyn, and it's called Renewal. And it's a group of ultra-Orthodox Jewish rabbis that help facilitate living kidney donation. And I was, I was Jewish, but not, that was like sort of, that's, they wouldn't maybe consider me Jew, that's Orthodox. And so I called the number, and they said, what temple do you belong to? I said, well, I don't belong to a temple. I go to an evangelical Christian church in Nazareth, but I'm Jewish, and they said, oh, we'd have to you'd have to talk to a rabbi about that. And it was really the woman, honestly, they're great people there, but it was really the woman who advocated for me. And, really, she called all the rabbis. I mean, I'm on a video thing here, but it's true. And I got calls from all the rabbis because she was a champion for me. And I had to go for an interview and I had to be accepted. And they said, there is no kidney for you here. We could help you build a campaign in your home community. So that yes in the Facebook led to all these things. And in May of 2019, May 6, 2019, I had a kidney donation awareness event in Nazareth. I didn't have a big enough living room to support. They needed 100 people. They said, we won't come. We'll send a rabbi all the way from Brooklyn to come and do an education session on what is living kidney donation. But you have to get 100 people, guaranteed.
Why that number?
Because they need to have a larger sample size. And very few people, they said, will necessarily come forward, and they do a donor swab. The transplant center doesn't do that. They do it, but this organization did an initial to see if they could narrow down the field. And they said maybe 3 or 4 people, maybe 5 out of 100 would even just come forward at the end of the meeting. No obligation, but just to do the swab. And then they pay for the lab testing to see if someone is a close, and then that person they would send to the transplant center, and they honor the donor. It's all about the donor. So they would help the donor. If I could find a donor from one of these meetings, if someone came forward and we agreed and was an initial potential match, this is the world of the rabbis. That's what they do. Mm-hmm. And they just finished their 1,000th transplant last week. 1,000.
Wow.
So a great organization. And then they would support emotionally and physically. They would meet them at the hospital. They would take care of them, pay for all their expenses and their lost wages at the end. It's a nonprofit. And I thought, if I could find a donor, I think they're going to be taken care of, But I couldn't go to New Jersey or Pennsylvania. I had to go to New York City. They only work with the New York hospitals, like Cornell, Columbia Presbyterian, NYU, mm-hmm. Montefiore in the Bronx, Hackensack now in New Jersey. So I would have to go to a third transplant and do another all-day thing. I went as fast as I could, give me the first appointment, and I went through and I qualified for the third transplant center, third state, and I had to. And that was the best thing. That was the best thing, yes, I ever did, because it's an amazing transplant center. Cornell, Weill Cornell, New York Presbyterian, Weill Cornell.
Okay.
I qualified there, and I they helped me with the fly, what you should do for a flyer. And they said, we won't come unless you have 100 people. We need a lot of people. We have limited resources. We have so many people, you have to guarantee. So on May 6, 2019, I asked a friend from the church if he would host the meeting, at his house, because he had a big estate down the road. He had a big place, and I have a little place. So he did. And remember I mentioned Field of Dreams about hearing a voice, but it was like the Field of Dreams. You've seen that movie, right? The Field of Dreams, mm-hmm. Kevin Costner. Mm-hmm. And you remember at the end, all the headlights are coming in the distance. Well, mm-hmm. That was what it was like for my meeting. Just cars lined up as far as you can see. Yeah, it was like that. I said that in the book. It was like the Field of Dreams. Uh-huh. And they came, and I had almost 100 people came, and 2 rabbis came to Nazareth, the black hats and the outfits and everything. They were fish out of water in Nazareth. And they came, and this 35-year-old Rabbi Moses,
okay,
had Moses, and he had been a donor. He was an altruistic donor. He had 6 young children at home, and he had donated 2 years earlier just to a stranger. He walked the walk and he talked the talk, and he was mm-hmm. funny and inspirational and amazing and everything else. So he answered all the questions, and then I was just supposed to be in the background. But you talk about the miracles, right? The miracles of life. The original rabbi who does all the outreach got sick an hour and a half before the meeting and said, we can't come. And I said, I have 100 people here. And they sent that backup. He was a backup rabbi. So him and another guy came, and it was really God, because that man was supposed to be there, Moshe. He was supposed mm-hmm. to come, and he came to Nazareth to help save my life. And he did. He made this amazing presentation, and they set up in the kitchen, but they don't expect 5 people maybe to come forward. So they only brought 15 swab kits, because they don't expect a few people, and 27 people wanted to come. Yeah, and they ran out. They ran out of swab kits.
Wow.
So, so I was sort of overwhelmed that everyone was yelling, I want one. They had to mail them to people. So I thought it was going to be over when Phil, you remember, he was going to donate, but he couldn't go through with it. I thought it was over in 2018. So I thought, here we are in 2019. I did a second meeting at a Jewish temple, at a temple in Teaneck, and I had 5 or 6 more people. So I had over 30 people came forward and swabbed and filled out the application. So I thought it's going to be over. And so it was May 2008, June, nothing. July, August, didn't hear anything. September, nothing. October, and I was starting to lose hope that what was going to happen. And I was still obviously on dialysis, and they said, don't ever call us. We'll never tell you anything. Don't call us. The only time you'll ever get a call is 2 weeks before the surgery. You'll get a call from the transplant center. It's confidential.
2 weeks.
2 weeks before. You'll never hear anything. We'll never tell you anything. So don't call. And that's the way it should be, to protect the donor. Any potential donor. People can be in it, out of it. They can do whatever. It should be like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard for a recipient to be waiting like that. And at the end of I was losing hope, and in October, I did write an email to the organization. I said, I just want, I'd like to do another meeting. I didn't do enough. Maybe I didn't do enough. And they said, unfortunately, they don't have the resources for that. And maybe in a year or so they could come back. And I said, I don't want to be on dialysis in a year. So I figured I'm on my own. I couldn't understand that. I mean, that over 30 people and nobody, there was nothing. So I couldn't understand it. So it was October, and I decided I told them, I said, I'm, really want to be working with the organization. I said, so I'm just maybe I'll do a meeting on my own just to keep it word out. And I approached a man in another church, another pastor, and he donated his multi-purpose room. And I thought, maybe I just didn't do enough. I thought I did enough. I thought I was doing it. So he, I do another meeting. And about a week later, after I had this idea about this other meeting, I got a call, and it was from Cornell.
They call?
No, the Cornell transplant, the transplant coordinator from Cornell, where I was, the hospital.
Uh-huh.
And her name was Vanessa, and she called and she said, you have a living donor. anonymous living donor.
That's a 2 weeks before the surgery phone
Well,
call?
Yes.
But this is a different phone call.
That was the phone call, but
Okay.
but the surgery date is donor driven. So so they were telling me to come in 2 weeks for that they're telling me ahead of time that you have a donor, but that the donor decided they want to do it on this date, and they're anonymous and you can't know who it is. They won't tell you. It's really up to the donor to reveal who it was. So I was wondering, who could it be? So I did have a little more time because the donor wanted to do it more closer to Christmas, I guess.
So this is around Christmas 2019?
This was in the end of October 2019.
Okay.
And beginning of November, something like that. End of October, beginning of November.
But for the surgery possibly happening during Christmas of that year.
Yeah, they said it'll be either the end of December, by December, right, somewhere in December, and they were letting me know to, don't get sick, and you have a donor, and just don't get sick, and do this, and you have to come for your pre-op. But it was like, I got a warning call. I did get a call that this is going to be happening. And
I'm starting to get nervous because in 2020 is when the pandemic begins. So it's like,
yeah, I never
you're
know.
borderline, Jay.
Yes, and was right at who knew, right? I was another miracle, right? Mysterious ways that would happen. So I was wondering who's the donor, and I decided though, instead of abandoning, I had this room, remember the pastor gave me the room for the thing. I said, I want to pay it forward, and I want to do a meeting about organ donation awareness. And I want to help other families. I was still on dialysis waiting, but for the surgery date, but I knew that anything could happen, but I wanted to raise awareness. And so I should have been resting maybe, but I went full speed ahead, and I went to do this meeting, and I started to invite people. I invited the local transplant center, both donor, because there's 2 teams. There's a donor medical team and there's a recipient. They keep everything separate. It's always separate. So, but both coordinators from the local hospital transplant center came, and they set up a table about information about for other people. And I invited, remember Brian from the Today Show, the donor champion? I asked him to be the keynote speaker. He came all the way up to Pennsylvania. And Phil, remember Phil, he wanted to be the donor. I made him the master of ceremonies for the night. So he was great. And then I invited the Gift of Life. I didn't know that November was Donor Sabbath. Now it's a religion for all religious organizations do support organ donation, even Buddhists, everybody.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a really kind of a thing like that. And so I didn't know that, but it was within November, and I spoke to the director in the Gift of Life, which is in Philadelphia, which handles all the deceased donor stuff and all that. And they have outreach, and they have volunteers. And so a donor mom came to speak. She had a table giving out information about on your driver's license, signing up. And her 18-year-old son had an aneurysm, sitting on the sofa out of the blue, and he was brain dead, but he was alive on life support, and they agreed, and she saved, I think, 7 lives. He liver, kidney, 2 kidneys. That's 2 people. I think even he had cornea, skin. They donated so many different. He saved so many lives. He did so. I mean, it was unbelievable, and the mother was so emotional. It was so moving, So I had all these different speakers and tables and information. And I invited the news network, the regional, like you would call, I'm saying like in Ithaca, I don't know what there's always like a regional network. In New Jersey is News 12. Do you have like a regional thing in Ithaca? I don't know. No
idea.
So it was like it wasn't like NBC New York, but it was like the regional network that covers this part of the world. And it's called Channel 69 News. And I had contacted them in advance, and the anchor sometimes he came, to do the whole report, and interviews, and they covered the whole event. It was on the 10 o'clock news. But the miracle of the whole thing was that I had this anonymous donor, and I was doing this just to pay it forward, right? And a lot of people from the church came, but I didn't. The pastor wanted me the day before the Monday meeting, 2 weeks before the surgery. That was 2 weeks before the surgery. And he said, I'd like you to get up and just in the praise time in the church to say that you'll be having a donor, that you have a donor. And I said, well, I don't want to do that because I don't want to take focus off the Monday, November 18th, whatever, to people would lose focus about helping other people. I'm already, somebody's going to help me. And he said, no, we really want you to do that. And so I waited in the front, in the front pew. It's a tiny little church. There's only 50 people in the church, 20 men in this little church. And he forgot to call on me. So I went back to my seat, and then a man who sometimes would stand up once in a while was very like when he spoke, it was like E.F. Hutton. When he spoke, it was something moving. And he was a 18-wheel truck driver. His name was John, and he was sitting next to me, right there, a few feet away from me for the whole time, for all those 3 years that I was in the church. He was quiet, but then he said something really important or inspirational. He's about 6'5", tall guy, and he gave a speech. He had just gone to Haiti for when I had that meeting for the May meeting. He had gone. There was some turmoil in the world, and they had to postpone the trip. There was a lot going on, but he did go later to Haiti during that time. After I had he was never at any meetings. I never knew anything. But his wife had come, and she had swabbed, and remember the 15 swab kit. She had taken the 15 swab kit. I didn't know that at the time. And she put it in her purse, but he said no. He's a big guy, but he would never do surgery. Later said that to the wife. We found that out. He wouldn't be doing that kind of a thing. But she had convinced him just before you go to Haiti on the church mission trip to help with the orphanage. Could you just swab? I'll mail it in. And at the last minute before he was leaving to go to the airport, he did swab, and she did mail it in. I never knew anything was happening, obviously, and. We thought he was going to announce that he was going to become a missionary, and he loved Haiti. It was so enriching to him. And some people did go on to do stuff like that. So he said he had a new mission. I think ministry. I forgot. What's the word? Ministry? I forgot if that's the word.
No idea, but a new
pathway, a new calling, or God. And so he gave this very emotional speech, and then I eventually realized what was happening. And then, wait 1 second. And then And then he said that he had directed his wife to get a Christmas, looked like a Christmas present. It was a box, and it was a box here, and it said, for you on your special day. And the wife handed the man John the box, and then he came over and he gave me, they put it on my, and I was just crying. I knew it was happening. He was the donor. He was going to lay down his life for me. He was the donor, the anonymous donor. A day
The
before,
guy next to you, the truck
sitting next to
driver
me.
that.
Yeah. And I opened the box. It says, for you on your special day.
Oh my
And
goodness.
inside the box, I couldn't open it right away. I was crying. I was really sobbing. And this was in the box. The kidney. And it was one side was like a sad, and then the other side was smiling. And he gave that to me, and he said he was going to lay down his life for me on December 5th, 2019. And I couldn't talk. It was very overwhelming for me. And this week is my anniversary. December, we just celebrated my 3-year anniversary at his home. He's Italian. We brought Italian food, and
how is he doing?
He's doing great. I mean, he still drives his truck, and he said he feels like nothing happened. He feels maybe better than he did before. Because they say that there's a study that kidney donors live longer than the general population. It's a little misleading because they're the healthiest people that they allow to donate. It's a little misleading, but they do live longer than the general population. They live long because they have that extra feeling of did something great, but it's also they're very healthy going in. Remember the donor Sabbath that we did that meeting in November? Well, a few weeks ago, the pastor who hosted that thing with the network, I spoke to him. I said, it's donor Sabbath now. Maybe we want to do something. And so he did a whole service instead of doing his sermon at this other, it's called El Shaddai, that's in Nazareth, another church in Nazareth. And so we were there, and I was there with my donor, and his daughter, turns out, the pastor's daughter, had donated a lobe of her liver 8 years ago to save a 10-month-old baby. She was called by God, yeah. And so the boy's 8. I met him. He was there. He's 8 years old now. And the daughter lives in Florida, so she was on the television Zoom, on the screens. They have like a modern thing. And then also I was there with my donor, and then there was like a whole organ, sort of like that it's a chapter in my book called A Room Full of Love, about how I decided to say yes after that day. I mean, how that meeting with the man and the daughter, that was like at the last 6 chapters of my book, I did that part of what happened, boom, boom, boom. The beginning part of the book, I mean, the rest, it was different amazing stories from my life of miracles that happened, not related to the kidney necessarily, but how there were other times I was saved. There were other things that happened, how God intervened unexpectedly and sent people. That was why the cover with the people with the life preserver was a famous baseball player, that guy in the picture, Doc Gooden, that Carlos would know who he is. I don't think Carlos even knows that story, but he read the book, so he knows the story. But that people were coming into my life that had no reason to be in my life, that were there, that were coming back. It was a lot of things. So, but the last part of the book, I talked about that, about what happened, and so yeah, so I was at the church that I spoke, and just
so
recently.
Since December 5th, 2019, you're a new man. You were reborn.
Yeah. Jewish guy moves to Nazareth. Jewish guy moves to Nazareth, and he gets reborn. Right? Jewish guy moves to Nazareth.
Do you remember exactly what you did after receiving the phone call?
Yeah, yes.
What did you do? Who did you call? What did you do? Did you celebrate? What did you do that day?
I talked about that in the book. I called, my wife was at work, and I called her. She was in shock. And I was not very, when I got the call from the transplant coordinator, she was expecting some kind of big excitement. I was very quiet and stunned, stunned. I couldn't believe that. I was very, more like internal about it. it wasn't like that kind of a thing. And I called my daughter. She was in her freshman. She went on to college. I mean, she was a first semester. This is right before the pandemic. I had the transplant right before the pandemic, December, just the critical follow-up, and then went right into the pandemic. I never got to go back to the transplant center. It was very hard in that sense, ready to restart my life, and everything just stopped, But my daughter, I called in her, she was just ready to go to dinner with her friends in like the cafeteria, school cafeteria. And I guess she was in shock. And I just heard, Lizzie, are you okay? Lizzie. And she had like, just sort of just like was overwhelmed and started crying, But it's just, there were a lot of many more things that happened. But that was like not, that was.
But wait, that day you received the phone call, you
Yeah.
made the phone calls to your wife, to your daughter.
Mhm.
And what did you do? What did you do?
I really was not, I was alone because my wife continued working in New Jersey, and she was staying, she had rented a room to stay. I had an apartment room staying there close to her job because she had the medical coverage from my transplant. So she stayed in the job to do that. So she wouldn't lose all her benefits and everything. And I was alone pretty much by myself. My daughter went to college, so I wasn't really like out doing, maybe I called, there was a woman who was the charge nurse in dialysis. Her name was Lorraine, my like angel, like the person that was just like, I could just see her. I got calm, and she took care of me for 2 years in the dialysis, the first 2 years. And she came, I this is something interesting about the book and about what I did in dialysis. And I share some of the stories, and it's, I don't know if Carlos mentioned anything, but I decided to make it like a positive thing about being in dialysis, and I wanted to not be about me. And I tried to I was looking at what I could do for other people that made me feel good, but I was looking at people that may not qualify, elderly people, and I was trying to do that. And some people it really helped me to be able to look outside myself. And most people are not in dialysis like coming in high-fiving everybody and doing, people don't do that. Doesn't happen, like, and it was weird, but I was trying to make people's dreams come true in dialysis. Before I even qualified to be on the list, I was looking around and I wanted to be close to the people, and I became close with a lot of the people. I was alert, I was young, and I was like the second set of eyes, another set of eyes. And if somebody was bleeding, or a few people they couldn't get to, but I was saying, things were a lot of things happened. But I was trying to look at what other people were going through and trying to encourage them. And a lot of miracles happened as a result of like focusing on, and it became like a thing that
Give us one example of one of those miracles.
Okay, so this is a story in the book. I mean, no one's gonna have to get the book. There was a man sitting next to me in the beginning of dialysis named Joe, and he was very angry and bitter, and he was really he just yelled all the time. He was just screaming all the time, like at the nurses and stuff. And he wanted an earlier treatment time. He wanted his stomach, he had some stomach issues, and he wanted to come, and he was just angry. And he was an amputee. He was missing, he had one leg, he had lost one leg, and he was wanting to get like a prosthesis, and he was trying to do that. So he couldn't drive, and his wife, he was just yelling, angry all the time. And I wanted to get to him. I wanted to get through to him in some way. So one day when he was a little calmer, I asked him about his life, and and it turned out he had been a professional musician. He had been a guitar player. And, the largest music festival on the East Coast, turns out, is in Bethlehem. It's called the Music Fest, and that's a thing. It's like the largest, I think, or one of the in the East Coast.
Okay.
And he had played his last gig at the Music Fest years before. And I said, "Wow, that's amazing." I said, he said, "I have a video of my band's last gig." I said, "Why don't you bring it in? We have the television screens here." He lit up. It was like, oh my gosh, people would see that he had a talent, a gift, something. He wasn't just a sick man on dialysis. And he asked the nurse said, okay. And they had a system in the back that they could put in for educational things. And you could just go, if you wanted to watch it, you go to channel 29 or whatever. And he was so excited. And that Saturday, he was just, like so excited to bring it. He brought it, he presented it to the nurse, and the nurse said, oh no, after all, it's against the rules. We can't do that. It's against the rules. And it was humiliating. Why? Why had they told him to bring it in?
Ah.
So I took the video and I said, I'll bring it home. I could watch. And I came back after watching it and made a big deal in front of everyone. Wow, it was amazing, you know, and everything. And we became friends. And I exchanged numbers. He got his prosthetic leg prosthesis, and he liked to fish. And so he finally, I told him, why don't you talk to the manager in the back? You know, just make an appointment. I'm sure she could help you. You know, not that yelling is not the way, you know, but you could make an appointment. He did, and he listened, and he got his treatment time. He got his leg, and then he changed his day. Like he went to another day to get the time, so I didn't see him then for a while, and he didn't call. I tried to get in touch with him. He wasn't really motivated, really, to get together. And then one day that summer, this is a few months later, he did call me. And he said, I want to come to your home. I want to play a concert for you and your family. So I don't have time, you know, to get a call at short notice. And he said, no, it's just for you and your daughter and your wife in the backyard. I just want to. So he thought he was going to bring an acoustic guitar. He's going to play a little thing, you know, just bring his guitar. But no, he showed up in the driveway. He drove by himself. He had his leg, and he opened the trunk of the car. He said he needed a tent because he had want to be out of the sun. And he popped the trunk of his car. He had amplifiers and microphones and all kinds of soundboards and everything. It took him 45 minutes to set up under the tent. And he just started to rock and roll. And he had his blue bandana around his head. And he had everything set up, and he just started going. The music blasted throughout the neighborhood, you know. And I said, what would you like for lunch in advance? He said, I'd just like a hamburger, and I'd like macaroni salad. And so my wife made nice hamburgers and made homemade, you know, macaroni salad. And after an hour, he played for an hour.
Wow.
And then he took a lunch break. He loved the hamburger. He loved the macaroni salad. And he said, I want to play one last set. I want to play one more. And 45 minutes he played, and he was like rock and roll. I mean, he was going crazy. He was singing and everything. And we helped him, you know, pack up the car, and he seemed exhausted but satisfied that he did this. And he was on a different day. So when I went in on the Tuesday, he was there the day before, and they said, all Joe talked about to the nurses and everyone was his concert at Jay's house, you know. And so this went on for a couple of weeks, that he just talked nonstop about how he did that. And that was like very fulfilling for him, clearly. And it was unexpected that he would just call me out of the blue to do that. And that it was a really special thing for him and for us. I took some videos and stuff. And then just 3 weeks later, I was at the end of my treatment. At the end, I was the last patient there. And that nurse, Lorraine, said she had some bad news. You don't really want to know about bad news? Like, what are you talking about? Like, you're on a thing connected to a machine, and they're telling you there's bad news. And Joe died. Joe had died just 3 weeks later. He died in his sleep that morning. And I was crying. And I was holding the nurse's hand. And she said, aren't you glad that you were able to help make Joe's last performance possible? And so the story is called Joe's Last Performance. And people just really moved by that story. And he inspired me. Joe inspired me from that. That was sort of organic. It just happened. But I think it came from, you know, just really reaching out to him and trying to get him to open up and to set, you know, and he really responded to that. And then this magic happened, you know, that he wanted. And people think that it was just his last wish, that he was fulfilled in the end, that he wanted to play one more time. And that's what people say that. And so because of that, I thought I would intentionally try to make people's dreams come true in dialysis. And I did. I made a staff member's dream come true. I wrote about that in the book. Another man that was very sick and very angry at times, who was a fascinating guy. And a famous person helped me make that happen. And so I was doing all these things. I forgot that I was on dialysis. I was sort of not even thinking about it. And it was hard to do dialysis, like physically hard, because you're very tired and worn out. I was working. So every day I worked the morning, I went to dialysis afternoon, then I worked the next day, you know, because I worked from home booking speakers and stuff with my speaker thing. And I started to think about like, who are the people that what would be my thing to do? So I started a reconnection tour, and that was just another thing I did. And I brought my daughter with me on tour, and I wanted to see and see into my life and see who were some of the people that had a positive impact on my life. So we went to New Orleans. I met a guidance counselor that I hadn't seen in 35 years. I knew for 1 year. She was 85 years old. And we went to New
Aw.
Orleans, and my family was from New Orleans. My mother was from New Orleans. So I had lived there for like a couple years.
Mhm.
And she was a really amazing person who planted the seed of why I was doing what I was doing. So I was thinking of who were the people that really made a pot. If I don't make it, I want to really go back and thank them. And so I went, my daughter came with me on almost all that. So she got to see about my life. And I did interviews from the dialysis chair called Dialing from Dialysis. So I would
Mhm.
call people and do interviews. You hear beep, beep, beep in the background. And, and I was interviewing people. And then I was making people's dreams come true. So then I was also doing, like, no one does this. I made a concert for the patients in the dialysis center. Like another guy, not him, but another man from the church donated his time. And then all the patients who were in the lobby, he made the whole performance. And I just was trying to think of everything I could do to be outside of myself, right? And so it was a fascinating time. So I knew there was a book. I knew I was going to write. And that was the other yes at the end, was fast forward to having translate, going to the pandemic. The pandemic kind of allowed me to stop. I mean, everything stopped. And it was kind of hard for me because I couldn't go back to the hospital. It was all on the phone with, like, I had a complication and they were just talking me on the phone, talking it through. And I couldn't go out. It's too dangerous, with the pandemic. So I was confined. And my daughter and wife were scared to go to the supermarket because they could just that would end my life. I mean, if they got sick and they got me sick, and I was so vulnerable. And so there was a lot, but I started writing about my life stories. And then
so the pandemic allowed you to
yes,
have the time
yes,
to write your book.
Yeah, and I really did it sort of not with like necessarily an outline, but I was writing some of the stories about that and some of the things. But what the yes for me was that I had never really shared about the traumas of my childhood and things that happened in my family. And I wrote about that and what the miracles were, what was saving me. Why did this famous baseball player that everybody knows, did he come into my life unexpectedly and kind of like save my life when I was a kid, then came back into my life unexpectedly personally. I mean, we're close friends now, but very unusual things that happened. There was a woman who I met when I was 19 years old, who didn't speak English. She was Dominican, and she wanted to pray with me. It's in the book. It's a little unusual, but that's something in the book you have to read about. But right before I started dialysis in 2016, I got a message from this woman and her daughter. Almost 33 decades later, wasn't thinking about her, but all the years she'd been thinking about me, and something that had happened that was also another miracle. It's hard to understand, but she had been looking for me for almost 3 decades that I didn't know she was looking for me. And she was searching, couldn't remember. She knew I was Jewish with a J and the last name was G. And her daughter went on to become a social worker. All she talked about through her childhood was that you got to find this guy, me. And that's a little hard to handle. And I didn't know why exactly, but she did in 2016. The daughter found me on Facebook. And I was 19, I was 40, in my 40s. And she said, I think that's him. And so that also really inspired me about the Reconnection Tour. Because I was wondering, who would I look for in my life? She's looking for me. And it wasn't until it wasn't until I was on dialysis. I went on to dialysis, and 2 years later, she was on the Reconnection Tour, because I was really wondering, like, but why though? Like, why was that? I didn't really get it. I mean, I knew where I met her, and when she told me, it really changed my life. Like, for what had happened that made her never forget about me. That's a little unexpected if you read the book. I think if Carlos, probably he was thinking, geez, I never knew this guy, it was a God thing. It was a God thing. So that I'm not going to say, but that was a God-driven event that I was not really aware. I knew something had happened, but I didn't get it until that many years later, almost 30 years later, when she's telling me what had happened from her end, her side of it. And I was a teenager. And so that a lot of things just happened in a way, in a sequence that seemed like a series of miracles. And I wrote on my book description, what if you choose to see your life as a series of miracles? If you everyone has that, maybe you're just not thinking about it, right? I mean, everyone has maybe not as dramatic in some cases, but you have those things. Maybe it's just thinking about it, how we get from things to things. My examples may be a little bit extreme, like how this woman was looking for me. Maybe people don't have people looking for them for 30 years. I don't know. But, or that there's a man, and remember the man who donated to me? He was 20 men in a church. He was a 1 in 100,000 perfect match for me, sitting next to me in a church that I'm Jewish, going to the church. And so there were a lot of miracles that maybe were a little on the extreme outside of things. So yeah, I wrote the book, and in the end, I was not going to publish the book. And the final yes was, I really, and my wife was a little bit like, well, what are my coworkers might think of this book, about telling a lot of things about your life and everything. And that kind of hurt me a lot. But
What made you say yes to publishing your book?
It was November 1st, 2021. And I don't think I ever really said this publicly, but I was giving up, and I was very depressed, that being so isolated for so long, and also thinking this always had been my dream to writing a book. Didn't know that this was going to be the book, or that I was going to have these experiences. And I felt I was sitting in my car, and I drove home from the supermarket pretty depressed, and something came over me. Don't give up. Just look on the internet and just call up 3 editors, because I wanted to get a copy edit, someone outside of me that could just read this and just see, and I was hesitant. And the first person said they just had a heart attack, the editor, and he said he was a spiritual editor, spiritual books, and that unfortunately he was sick and he wouldn't be able to help me for another year and a half or something. I said, well, I wish you the best, though. I wish you a recovery, but I'm going to go ahead, And then a lady in Texas, and then I saw this one man on his website. I knew he was the one. I just saw him, and the way his words on the website, like a Hector type, really like a Hector. And I saw him, and I said, yes, that's the guy. And I said, I don't know if I can afford that. What I wanted was really someone to read, copy, edit, and to just, some guidance, but mainly just that. And he said, send me 2 stories. I want to see what your writing level is. So I sent him Joe's Last Performance, and another story called The Doc I Needed, which is related to the baseball player and my family, which is really the raw tragedy that happened in my family. And he wrote back, well, did you already have this professionally edited, Joe's Last Performance? I said, no, I had no help with this, And he said, well, you're a really good writer. You had no training? And no, I said, that's pretty shocking. This is really, really good. You're a really good writer. And he said, he spent like 2 hours with me, no charge, on the phone. And he said, you could do the book this way or this way, put it together. It didn't make sense to me. And I waited another 4 months, November, December, January, February, March. I waited. I knew I wanted to work with him, but I wasn't sure if that fit the way. So he says, just send me. So I didn't send him everything. So it was another waiting time. And I finally, in March, I think it was then March 2022. Is that possible? March?
This year?
March, I think. It feels like it was longer ago, but I think it was November 2021, then went into March 2022, right? And I finally got the courage, and he said, just send me them in an order that you think would be good. Because you could do a collection of stories. And the woman that I was mentioning that was looking for me became now a second mother to me. I call her my spiritual mom. She's my second mom, spiritual mom. And she's the most amazing. But what happened and is very bizarre. What happened to her and what's happened. And there's a lot. The book is weird. It's unbelievable what's happened. But she was not well. And she was encouraging me, finish the book, just finish the book. And I thought, I really need to push ahead. So I sent all the stories in the thing, and he said, well, I mean, I just got to say this, it's not about anything, it's just about me and you, right? So, and whoever's gonna watch this. But the editor his name is Dave Aretha. He is such a sensitive Hector, like I could just imagine, like, that kind of a person. And he, I didn't ask for anything. It just said he made me a really good price, because he said he didn't really have to do that much, but he was going to do more for me to help me organize, do what I needed to do. And he sent me back the first draft, and he included an editor's note. So that was, I didn't ask for that, an editor's note. And it was, so he wrote this. He said, before I began to edit Jay's memoir. Now, meanwhile, before I read this, I say there was a doctor that I had that I've known for 30 years, and he wanted me to send him stories. That was the original thing about during dialysis. I said, why do you need stories from me? And he said, well, because I'm best friends with the manager of a famous author. He said, well, I don't say how it's going to help me. I'm not really looking to be published. I'm just going to maybe self-publish something. He said, no, he says, send me the stories. And when I send him the stories, he says, your stories are like Doritos. I can't read just one. I can't eat just one. So I said, well, who is the author? Who's this guy that you're friends with? He was a top doctor. He had a lot of connections. And he said, it's on a need to know basis. I'm not going to tell you that. But then eventually he said that who the friend, the longtime manager of this famous author, happens to be my favorite author, my favorite inspirational author. What's the likelihood? Another miracle. I didn't write that in the book. There's always some strange thing like that. And so I had shared that, and this is what the man wrote. So the editor wrote this. Before I began to edit Jay's memoir, he and I had several emotionally strong conversations about his book, and the extraordinary connections he has made in his life. Jay is an outgoing, big-hearted man who has a deep desire to get to know people and help them in any way he can. As such, people gravitate toward him, open their hearts, and share their remarkable stories with him. In our conversations, Jay and I bonded over a mutual fascination with writer Mitch Albom, the Detroit Free Press sports columnist who went on to author many bestsellers such as Tuesdays with Maury.
I just got that book from these mini libraries that they put on the street with books that you can just borrow.
And you just got that? That's unbelievable.
Yes.
Jay and I greatly admired Albom's writing style, specifically his ability to bring out the personality, humanity, and emotional impact of the men and women he writes about. When Jay and I were younger writers, Albom inspired both of us to touch readers in similar ways, During our phone conversations, before I read his manuscript, Jay and I discussed how to organize the chapters in this book. I told him, just send me the chapters in non-chronological order in a sequence that simply felt right to him. He did so, and it was the right decision. I never asked for this. I never asked for anything, Throughout my edit of Jay's manuscript, I felt transported back to the late 1980s when I read the live album, a seemingly scattered collection of Mitch's best free press columns, but with a thread of humanity connecting the stories. It was a warm, sometimes melancholy, and often joyful reading experience. I did not have a similar experience until 34 years later, while reading Jay's collection of life stories in this remarkable book. Whether it's the story of the sweet-hearted dancer who offered to donate a kidney to Jay, or the day he held hands in prayer with Pastor Darrell Strawberry, or a toast of gratitude from Jay's good friend Mike the Clown. These indelible stories surprise, inspire, and pull at the heartstrings. I hope you are as moved as much as I was by Mysterious Ways, David Aretha. Now, I didn't know that I was getting that. I didn't ask for that, but there's connections of so many things coming together, and I knew I was in the right hands, and I said yes, he encouraged me to publish the book and to do the book. I almost didn't share the book. And so I've gotten so much response. Not everyone's going to take the time to write a review or anything. Like, I have 34 5-star reviews on Amazon. Okay, I'm being a little out there, but I get so many notes and calls and side private messages, and remember my wife was concerned about, what are my coworkers doing? Well, her coworkers, several of them, read the book, saw it on Facebook, whatever, read the book, and they were the most amazing supporters of my book. The school psychologist, the director, this one, that one, other one. They loved the book. They wrote reviews. They wanted to talk to me. They wanted more copies. They wanted to have in their book club. I mean, it was overwhelming to me. I literally couldn't handle as much. You know, it was like John announcing that he was the donor. It was a hard day, but it was also revealing some of the most personal things about my life that I'd never shared with anyone. Some of the things, and I think I was a little nervous. You know, Carlos got the book. I mean, I think he wouldn't have known those things. When I met him in England, you know, he did, you know, a few years before I had gone through some of the most traumatic things. And I'm glad that he decided to read the book or whatever, but it was like, you know, I think I've just gotten over this. These past 5-6 months, I've gotten over that feeling of like, okay, it's out there, it's out there, it's out there, it's out there now, you know. I just finished recording my audiobook. So many people requested, they wanted to hear my voice reading. So I recorded it, and a friend of mine who was a blind motivational speaker.
Wow.
He actually put me in touch with an award-winning audiobook producer. I said, I wouldn't be able to afford that right now. He said, no. He told him my story, and the guy said, we're going to do this. We're going to make it happen. So he trained me. My software, I recorded, and he's doing all the engineering and the mastering of all the audio. And I said, and I thought by Christmas that it could be.
It's going to be out?
He's submitting it, but he said it takes time to process on Audible and Amazon.
Okay.
It's not like doesn't go up the same day. So I was hoping maybe.
Bueno, but it's going to be December, January.
Yes. And so
we can find your book in Amazon.com?
On Amazon.com. The paperback.
And the audiobook is coming.
Yes. And right now the paperback and the Kindle is there. And I know it sounds like I said a lot, but there's a lot in the book. And I never thought that I would tell anyone I was on dialysis. I said yes. I was saying yes to the doctor just to go about. I was scared to go get would I qualify after that, and then to be able to make it through the transplant, and then the pandemic and everything else. So and then the book. And you know, I just want to say that again, if I seem like I'm just being not humble, forgive me, but it's not about that. It's just about you know how in dialysis I wanted to try to be, you know, do stuff. So I thought, you know, my business ended or stopped or whatever, and it was a hard time because there was a pandemic. I booked speakers in schools, there's no school. So I said, what could I do? And I started to connect with people on my own. I became an ambassador for the Gift of Life 3 days before they closed the world down in March of 2020. Wow. But I wanted to help people, so I just spontaneously connected with a few people that led to another few people, and I started you heard the term walking alongside. It's like a thing they say in the church, like walking alongside, encouraging people. They say that. I learned that if you're walking alongside people to encourage them. I just use that term, but I was just encouraging people on their kidney journeys, and it was really magical for me to share everything that I knew, that I learned from them, and then they became like family to me. So one woman who was from Ecuador, lives in New Jersey, she had a donor, but the administration at the time, the past one, they wouldn't get the visa, and he was to come to donate. And she was about she was 49 years old, wonderful lady, and her husband, she had a 5-year-old son, she had a young son, now he's 8. And I just didn't know her or anything. She said, I need a kidney for my 5-year-old son, a 5-year-old. And then she said, no, my son doesn't need a kidney. I need a kidney so I could be alive for my 5-year-old son, be there for him. You know, it was that. So I started giving her suggestions, and she was just very hesitant at first. And then she just started opening up to make her campaign for herself. She even went to the Jewish organization. She wasn't Jewish, but she did a meeting, and I helped her, but it helped her in the process of putting her story out there. And the husband was like in the background, but she kept calling me, kept, messaging me, and I give her another idea, and she would do it and everything. And then finally I was helping other people, and then I got a message from her. I was transplanted. She was in the hospital. And Senator Menendez, he's a U.S. senator from New Jersey. You know that name? Yeah, do you know that? He's a U.S. senator. He basically, I said, why don't you go to the media? I don't know if I had something to do with it, but she did seek out like publicity, and he got found out about her case, and he got the visa for the nephew to come, and he donated to her. And she called me right after the surgery, like the next morning, and I didn't know that was happening at that moment. I was helping, doing other things with other people, and it was just my way of like just not, just feeling good about helping somebody else. I was just it was strange. So and I was learning, and so she said that she wanted to share with me later, a few months later, like what was really going through her mind, and how I didn't realize that what I was doing with her, like what I was helping her with potentially, to how much it meant like to her. I mean, it was like overwhelming how much she thought of it. And she wanted to tell me all about what was going on in her mind. And she said, how she didn't think that she was going to make it. And then she bumped into me in Facebook, whatever. And I didn't realize it was that big of a thing. And she was expressing herself. So I said, do you want to be in the book? And she said, I would love to write the story. So I wrote her story, one person story in the book. It was right before the epilogue, and it's called Tamara's Miracle. It's about her story. And I was wondering, what is she going to think about my life, though? She doesn't know about my life. What is she going to think when she reads about my life and the traumas of my life and stuff? And I was a little nervous about those kinds of things, and she became the biggest champion of my book. She loved the book. She said she didn't want it to end, and that she was posting pictures. She did so many things about, and she became a really close friend. And we've been to visit her at her son's birthday party in New Jersey, and she is really doing well. Like she's doing great. She just became a real estate agent. I mean, she's like really
wow.
Good. And so all these people are part of my life, like in some ways now. A lady in Tennessee that lived on a farm in Tennessee. She calls me her little brother. And then there was a guy in Connecticut, and he had 3 transplants because he has a genetic disorder, and he was a great guy. And he even wrote a testimonial for my book. And then there was a guy, all people, different parts of the country, and it became very much like, what can I do? I didn't see anyone anymore. I wasn't in dialysis. I had no one. I was alone. And then that became like a big thing for me and then now I do that now. Now people call and I just share with them. I also became a kidney navigator for the National Kidney Foundation.
What's that? What's a navigator?
Like sort of like a little piece of what I was doing. They developed this program for helping people to share their story in need of a living kidney donor. And they had really nice people. And so I did the training online, and I got my first client. And tomorrow we're going to be helping him write his story about his need. And he said, and it's interesting to see where people are in their journey. And if I'm like one little speck of somebody that could just, share something. And so I'm an ambassador for the Gift of Life in Philadelphia. Then I became this other navigator thing. Most of the stuff I was just making up, doing, helping and trying to help something. So now I got invited to speak at a library in New York about my book. Somebody read the book. So I'm going on January 14th to do that. I was scared to go out too much, even now with all the flu season and everything. But this is what I want to do I was booking speakers from behind the scenes, right? I was the one always helping people. And the theme of my bureau, and stop me, I'm talking a lot, but the theme of my speakers bureau is overcoming adversity. I never told anyone why I made that bureau. It's in the book, but I mean, like I was behind the thing, helping people as a speaker that had cerebral palsy, somebody who was paralyzed, people that were that had been a gang member who became a high school principal, people that are part of, all kinds of people like that. And that sort of, I was sort of just behind it.
And now you're becoming the speaker?
And that's what I really want to do now. And people are maybe interested. I don't know. Would you be interested in hearing that story? I don't know. Would you be interested? I'm just saying, would that be interesting to someone just on the outside world, sharing about overcoming this type of challenge or in other things? I mean, you don't know about my life totally. Maybe you read the book. Maybe Carlos will give you the book.
Yeah, I'm waiting for him to finish it to read it myself. Of course, it would be a very interesting story.
So
you have so many stories within your own story that I'm just picturing like a series of books.
Yeah.
You publish this one with all these stories, but the stories continue. It's
Yes,
going on. And so it's like
exactly.
volume 1, volume 2, 3.
Yes, that's true. I mean, I finally made it back to the transplant center September 1st, and they gave me the full workup and said I'm doing great. And the head chief physician assistant, this great lady, her name is Johanna, the chief of they take care of the patients after, and she's the head of the thing, and she's great. She said that I sent her the book as just like, and she said, thank you. And then she said, I made it halfway through the book. And then, but that she had a patient who had a living donor and backed out. She was too scared to get the transplant. She thought it'd be too much for her. I never heard that. But she said she gave her my book, and she thought my book might be encouraging to her. I was like, so she said, I want you to write the next book. And she gave me like the outline. She said, I want you to write a book for like a guidebook for transplant for kidney patients and for transplant. And so I think that's going to be a shorter book. That'll be like, and then someone else suggested, the editor suggested, why don't you expand upon one of the, like you said, so you got it. So but I really enjoy that. I really enjoy I really find the writing that's my calling. I always was a good writer, but I think there's so much that I feel like I would be remiss not to to do. Thank you.
Because it's also interesting. It's sharing our personal stories is always very difficult. And because it makes us very vulnerable. Like your wife was saying, she was feeling vulnerable by you sharing all these very intimate stories. But it's the best way to really connect with other human beings. It's like the best connection is when you share all these very personal stories, you make them public, and then someone else, I mean, we're more than 8 billion people. You know how many people have lived similar things or can learn from your story and take a different path just because they heard you, they read you, because they found about you.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. That can happen. I mean, I'm happy that I could live to see, my daughter is like everything, like Maya, is I'll just say it's another little thing is that can you believe that right before I went to, you'll understand it when you read the book, it's some of my life and family thing is very strange and unusual. But right before I published the book, like a few days before, maybe in the week leading up, I got an email. This is not in the book. And it was a man saying, "Are you the Jay, the son of Dr. Gittleson?" Now I knew the name. I have a very good memory. I was 6 years old, and this was a former student. My father was a biologist. He was a biology professor at that university where we went to, where Carlos and I went, but the campus I went to. And he had not paid much attention about his own kids, but he did mentor and help some other people. And this was a guy that I remembered, and he went on to be, I didn't know what happened, but I knew he was a smart guy, and my father helped him. And he says, I've been looking for your father. I've been he's been in touch with my father for 50 years. So I was 6, he was 18 as a freshman in college. I don't know, maybe must be like in his mid 60s. And he contacted me looking for my father. And even though I didn't have always the greatest relationship with him, I had also been trying to get in touch with him. But this man for sure was a reinforcement that something was not right. He said that my father was the father that he never had. And I wanted to say, well, my father was the father I never had either. But no, I didn't say that. but I wanted to keep it very positive, right? Positive. It turns out he went on, my father got his PhD at UCLA. He had gone on with the help of my father, have an all expense paid PhD. And he was also a biologist and then gone on to corporate pharmaceutical research. He was a very successful in corporate pharmaceutical. I didn't know anything. So I'm thinking, where does he live? In California, Arizona? I'm looking on his thing. He lives in Pennsylvania. And I very positive, and he was a really great guy. And he unexpected, mysterious ways, that, and I'm like, well, he would know nothing about my life or anything. I told him I had a daughter, and he lived 20 minutes from the university where my daughter goes to school. And my daughter is a microbiology major in the pre-med program. So he was like, I would really like to get in touch with her. So my father, to him, was his beloved professor, and he wanted to sort of, in a way, be a mentor to the granddaughter of his, who's also in the biological thing. It was very unexpected, and we went to dinner. He invited us to dinner. My daughter and I met him. We spoke for 6 hours.
Wow.
Couldn't understand. It was hard to comprehend the lack of relationship that my father had with me, because his was so full and wonderful. It was a very emotional time, and it was also very unexpected. And then he bought the book. Then I didn't hear from him right away. It was hard. I think I was just trying to protect him in a way, from not wanting to damage any positive. I said, you're a blessing in our lives. That you came into our lives, and there should be no reason for you to have. I mean, your experience with my father was amazing, and so there's nothing to take away from that. And I said, my father, I have no confirmation, because his second wife has not. My father lived abroad in another country, so he lived not in, and have had no. He was off the grid, so I had no contact, and his wife has not reached out to me with anything. He's not around, but I don't know what happened to him. Very strange, mysterious. This book is my life is like, but I told the man, the student, who's now in his 60s. I said, my father did leave a gift behind you to him. He's the gift, and so we've been in touch, and he's a really great guy. So a lot of unusual things happened right around the time of this happening. Like, it was like strange, but. It's just, in my life, somebody said, Jay, do you ever have an ordinary day? Do you ever have an ordinary day, Jay? I'm like, I don't think so. My days are not ordinary. But I don't know, how is that possible? I'm asking you, how can someone be having these things happening all the time like that? Maybe it's just because I don't know.
I was telling Carlos the other day, he was sharing some of the stories in your book, and I said, it's interesting because he calls it miracles. But what I can see is these things are happening in his life because he's paying attention. He's paying attention to the human beings that are in front of him, that are part of his life, that just the guy that crossed the street.
Yes.
Because he's paying attention, all these beautiful things are happening.
Yes.
That's the key.
Yes, and I totally 100% agree. And I made this little heading on, I think, one of the descriptions. What if you choose to see your life as a series of miracles, right? And that's true. Like, I think, like I said in the beginning, I think that it's happening, and maybe people aren't just paying attention to it, right?
This morning, for example, Maya was not in, she decided recently that she doesn't like Mondays. It's the start of the school week, and so Carlos told her something in the morning, and then I told her something before she left, which was basically, you decide in your mind with your attitude how you want to live today. And when she came back from school, she said, you and Papa were right, because I had a wonderful day. And it all started because I thought of what you told me, and I said, yes, this day can be fun.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. Same Monday as last week, but it's a different attitude. It's a different way of going through life.
Yes, so, I think that you're 100% right. I think that in many ways, like, I'm not sure why I wanted to pay attention to. I like to pay attention to the people that no one pays attention to. And I found that's people who are the most special. So if you get to it and you see some of in the book of, like, I'd be more interested in the interesting homeless man, into, the man who may be, on the bottom end of society. Those are people. And I just feel like more connected in some ways, so it's true paying attention, but some people do, maybe more so than I think. But I really think it's unusual, maybe, that I would be wanting to be involved on a deep personal level with certain people beyond just paying attention, But you're right. I think if people do pay more attention, they would see a lot of some things that are happening, right? But I wasn't trying. I didn't think I was trying. It's just the way that I am, and maybe it's hurt me in a lot of ways. Maybe I get sidetracked in a lot of ways, paying attention to things. But when I saw that opportunity with Joe in the Dialysis Center, or some of the other characters in my life, maybe some of them don't even want to have anything to do with me, and I kind of pushed my way in because I just want to get in there. I'm a very different kind of guy, maybe in this way. I don't think, like, if you want to get a PhD and you want to become a professor or a translator, I don't know if you're really going to be, worrying about the homeless guy. I don't know. Maybe, like I do some things that are like outlandish, but for me become in the end like rewarding, And I'm not sure exactly, but
you're like a collector of stories.
Yeah. Collector of people, and then stories after that. I don't know, but
well, Jay,
thank you so much.
We're gonna have to end this. I think Maya and Carlos already came back. I told them 1 hour, and we have been talking for almost 2. So
I can't believe that. I felt like a minute. I have
to create 2 videos, part 1 and part 2.
I hope I just didn't go on too much, but thank you.
Oh, it's very interesting. I mean, as I said, you're a collector of stories. You had so many stories to tell. I really appreciate you coming on. What if I say yes? Your yeses are wonderful. There are a lot of things to learn about this world of our own health and transplants and donors and everything that goes with the personal stories and
daughters
and family and sharing and writing and helping other people do something they've never done before, inspiring people, like all the many stories that you told us. That's why we've been talking for 2 hours. It's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing
having
the stories.
It was an honor to be a part. I really was unexpected, but very wonderful. And thank you. And I was thinking, should I leave the dolly just in the leaves there and just let it? Maybe the kids are going to come back for it. The kids.
I don't know, but what you do have to do is take a picture and send it to me. We need to put it at the end of the video. Are you ready to have the picture?
Send it to Carlos? Text it to Carlos?
No, you can text it to me.
Okay.
Just send it to me.
Okay, so
as you've seen in the previous videos, at the end I put I show pictures that have to do with the conversation we've had.
You want me to send you a few?
Yes, please.
Okay, that's good. Like, how about this one?
You decide what you want to share now. Yes, that has to be one. A picture of your book, a picture of the kidney, what is that gift, a picture of whatever you want to share, and we'll put them at the end.
Oh, that's amazing. You're really so professional. I also have a podcast, and I sort of like lag behind because of the book.
Okay, so send me all the information so I can also post it.
Oh my gosh.
And let's ask whoever watches this video, buy the book. You can find it in Amazon or the audiobook or the Kindle or whatever version you like. And please leave a review for Jay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'll wait for your pictures, and whenever I edit the videos and make the part 1 and part 2, I'll let you know, so you can also share them with the people you want.
Thank you. And I can share too on all the social media,
Yes.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you, Jay. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.